Earth is not a home. It's a prison. Worse than that, it's a tomb. A cosmic trap designed to cage your very soul. And no one bothered to tell you. You've been conditioned to believe this reality is all there is. Birth, school, work, family, death, rinse and repeat. But hidden beneath the layers of everyday existence is a horrifying truth. This place was engineered to enslave consciousness. The architects, beings known as the Archons. They aren't metaphorical demons or abstract forces of negativity. They're ancient cosmic entities, intelligent and malevolent, who forged the material world to imprison divine sparks, souls, tricking them into identifying with flesh and bone. You think you're free because you can choose your breakfast or your weekend plans. That's not freedom. That's a distraction. The origins of this trap go deeper than most religions dare to explore. According to the secret book of John, the leader of the Archons is Yaldabaoth, an ignorant creator who fashioned this realm out of arrogance and ignorance. He declared himself the only God, not out of wisdom but out of blindness to the higher reality beyond him. His creation, this universe, is fundamentally flawed, a twisted copy of something purer, designed not for enlightenment but for control. Yaldabaoth didn't create out of love. He created to dominate. And it's not just about physical suffering. The real prison is mental, spiritual. The Archons manipulate thought, belief, and perception. They constructed systems, governments, religions, even cultural norms to keep you obedient. Ever wonder why life feels like a constant struggle? Why happiness is fleeting and suffering seems inevitable? That's not by chance. It's design. They feed off the energy generated by your confusion and despair. Every fear, every frustration, every heartbreak, it's food for them. Let's be clear, this isn't some fringe conspiracy theory cooked up in a basement. The secret book of John was suppressed because it threatened the dominant religious and political powers. It suggested that the God of this world, the one many have been taught to worship, is not the ultimate source of goodness, but a deceiver. Think about how radical that is, the very foundation of the world's moral and spiritual systems built on obedience to a false god. Entire civilizations have been engineered to keep humanity asleep, chasing temporary pleasures, fearing inevitable suffering, and never questioning why. This tomb, Earth, is layered with barriers. Birth is the first shackle. Society reinforces the cage. And death? It's not an escape. The Archons intercept souls at the moment of passing, recycling them back into the material world. Reincarnation isn't a chance for growth in this system, it's the continuation of captivity. They whisper illusions of karmic balance and divine justice to keep souls compliant. But the truth is far more sinister. This is a self-sustaining soul farm, a perpetual cycle of entrapment. The most insidious part? You've been conditioned to love your cage. To cherish your body, your identity, your attachments, all constructs designed to keep you invested in the illusion. The Archons don't need chains. They make you chain yourself. It's psychological warfare on a cosmic scale. And for millennia, almost no one has noticed. But the Gnostics did. They documented it, risked persecution, and hid their texts to preserve the knowledge. This isn't about faith, it's about knowledge. They understood that to see the world as it truly is requires shattering every comforting belief you've ever held. It's brutal, it's terrifying, but it's the only way to understand the scale of the deception. So here you are, living, breathing, thinking, inside a tomb built for your soul. Every structure around you, every system you've trusted, carefully designed to keep you from asking the only question that matters: why am I really here? Forget what you've been told about divine order or a benevolent universe. Strip away the comforting narratives, and what you're left with is a hierarchy of deception, a power structure where the ones pulling the strings aren't gods of light but cosmic parasites known as the Archons. These entities aren't figments of imagination or ancient superstition. They are described in the secret book of John as calculated forces that dominate the material world with surgical precision. And while people waste time debating theology, the Archons operate behind the scenes, embedding themselves in every layer of existence to maintain control. The Archons don't need to be seen to rule. Their influence is systemic. They engineered complexity as a weapon, social systems, authority structures, and belief systems that keep humanity in a constant state of confusion and submission. Every time you accept things just as they are, that's their design working perfectly. These entities are not chaotic, they are organized, strategic, and relentless. And their methods? Far more sophisticated than some primitive notion of demons tempting people. No, the Archons infiltrate thought itself, embedding programs of self-doubt, fear, and blind obedience. They don't invade with armies, they colonize perception. Historically, this isn't new. Ancient Gnostic texts didn't just describe the Archons, they outlined their tactics. According to the Secret Book of John, the Archons are led by Yaldabaoth, but what's more disturbing is the hierarchy beneath him. These are not random beings. Each Archon governs specific realms of human experience, desire, anger, pride, and ignorance, effectively creating a matrix of mental and emotional traps. You think free will is absolute? Not in their system. They influence choice itself, guiding humanity into cycles of conflict and complacency. Wars, greed, division, it's not just human nature. It's by design. You might wonder, why go to such lengths? What's in it for them? Energy. Consciousness is currency in this cosmic game. The Archons don't feed on blood or sacrifice, they feed on attention, on emotional turmoil, on the energetic fallout from chaos and suffering. Every time a population is plunged into fear or outrage, they harvest the energy generated. That's why large-scale conflict and societal turmoil persist. It's not incompetence or chance, it's sustenance for them. Look at the structure they've built. They don't just rule through fear, they manipulate hope. False promises of salvation, endless pursuits of success, and unattainable ideals, all distractions to keep humanity chasing illusions. The Archons have no interest in human flourishing, they want obedience masked as choice. They're the ones who ensure that every escape route leads to another trap, every solution is another problem in disguise. That's how you maintain a prison without walls, by making the inmates believe they're free. Technologically, this manipulation extends beyond ancient times. The Archons don't care about human progress, they exploit it. Advances in knowledge and innovation are twisted into tools of deeper control. Technology that could liberate consciousness is instead used to distract, monitor, and numb the population. People voluntarily hand over their focus and privacy, offering their minds on a silver platter. The Archons don't need to take power, they're given it freely. And let's not ignore how they distort spiritual awareness. The Archons have hijacked the very concept of divinity. Instead of encouraging inner knowledge, they impose external authorities and dogmas designed to suppress individual awakening. It's no accident that spiritual systems often demand obedience, guilt, and blind faith. Those aren't paths to enlightenment, they're mechanisms of control. Worship, in many forms, becomes energy directed toward the Archons' construct, reinforcing the very system that imprisons humanity. But what's most insidious is how they manipulate identity. The Archons instill a fragmented sense of self, keeping individuals locked in endless roles and labels, nationality, gender, status, ideology. Divide and conquer isn't just a political strategy, it's a metaphysical one. The more fractured consciousness becomes, the easier it is to dominate. Unity, clarity, and self-awareness are threats to their control, so they sow confusion at every turn. Historically, those who challenged this system were silenced. Gnostics, mystics, and independent thinkers weren't just persecuted for heresy, they were targeted for exposing a cosmic scam. The Archons don't just fear rebellion, they fear recognition. The moment you identify the puppet masters, their grip weakens. That's why ancient texts like the Secret Book of John were buried, burned, or dismissed as myth, because knowledge is dangerous to them. Not in some philosophical sense, literally dangerous. And here's where it gets even more twisted, the Archons' entire operation depends on humanity's cooperation. They can't directly override free will, so they rely on subtlety. They plant suggestions, orchestrate environments, and let people imprison themselves. You think a prison guard needs to be present when the prisoners police each other? That's the brilliance of their strategy: minimal effort, maximum control. You've heard the names of gods thrown around in myths, religions, and philosophies. Stories of benevolent creators, divine plans, and moral orders. But what if the so-called creator of this world isn't wise, benevolent, or even competent? In the secret book of John, there's no ambiguity. Yaldabaoth, the self-proclaimed god of this world, is portrayed as an arrogant, blind, and corrupt being who created the physical universe out of ignorance and self-importance. He didn't bring forth life out of compassion, he acted out of pride, declaring, "I am God, and there is no other beside me." Not because he knew the truth, but because he was completely unaware of the higher realities beyond his limited vision. The very foundation of this world is built on his delusion. Yaldabaoth isn't just an incompetent creator, he's a tyrant. He crafted this physical dimension to reflect his own twisted nature, imperfect, chaotic, and oppressive. He wanted absolute authority, and to maintain that, he manufactured a reality where ignorance thrives. This isn't a cosmic accident. It's a calculated move to keep sentient beings trapped in his dominion. He sees humanity not as a creation to nurture but as a resource to exploit, a captive audience feeding his need for power and recognition. His declaration of godhood isn't a sign of divine truth. It's the desperate claim of a being terrified of being exposed. In Gnostic cosmology, Yaldabaoth didn't act alone. He spawned the archons, cosmic enforcers of his dominion, to administer his authority. But Yaldabaoth remains the source, the head of the corruption. His ignorance is the core problem. He believed himself to be the pinnacle of existence, blind to the fact that his creation was a pale, corrupted reflection of a much higher, purer reality. Everything he touched was tainted by that ignorance. The physical world, under his influence, is riddled with suffering, conflict, and decay because it mirrors the chaos within him. One of the most disturbing aspects of Yaldabaoth's narrative is how he manipulates the divine spark within humanity. According to the secret book of John, he unknowingly incorporated a fragment of higher divinity into humans, a spark that did not belong to him. This enraged him. Imagine creating something and realizing it's inherently superior to you. His solution? Bury that spark under layers of flesh, distraction, and false doctrines. He constructed religions and belief systems that centered around his worship, ensuring that any spiritual inquiry circled back to him. It's psychological warfare on a cosmic scale. He doesn't just want control, he demands reverence, despite being an imposter. Yaldabaoth's entire system of control hinges on deception and coercion. He utilizes fear as a primary weapon: fear of death, fear of punishment, fear of the unknown. These aren't natural reactions, they're programmed responses designed to keep you compliant. And while most traditions teach that divine beings are omniscient and omnibenevolent, Yaldabaoth is neither. His so-called wisdom is limited, and his morality is non-existent. He rules through confusion and keeps the masses docile through cycles of pain and fleeting pleasure. The temporary joys people experience in life? In this paradigm, they're strategic, small crumbs thrown to prevent total rebellion. Historical suppression of these teachings isn't coincidental. Gnostic texts like the secret book of John were systematically targeted for eradication because they challenged the very legitimacy of Yaldabaoth's authority and, by extension, the structures that benefited from that authority. Religious and political institutions aligned with the narrative that this world is the divine creation of an all-loving God. Questioning that premise wasn't just heresy, it was a threat to the entire control mechanism. The Gnostics weren't attacking faith, they were exposing a counterfeit system of divinity built on manipulation and fraud. Yaldabaoth's arrogance extends beyond creating a flawed world. He actively seeks to keep humanity ignorant of its true potential. The concept of original sin, the fear of divine wrath, the endless cycles of guilt and repentance, all stem from his need to keep the human spirit subdued. By instilling a sense of inherent unworthiness, he ensures that people never question his authority. If you believe you're flawed by nature, you're less likely to challenge the figure claiming to be your only path to redemption. But Yaldabaoth's greatest tool is the illusion of choice. he presents dualities, good versus evil, success versus failure, salvation versus damnation, but all within the confines of his constructed system. It's like being offered two doors in a prison cell, only to find both lead to deeper levels of captivity. The complexity of his deception is precisely what makes it effective. Most people never think to question the structure itself, they just navigate within it, unaware that the architect is a blind, power-hungry entity who feeds off their confusion. You've been told that death is an end. Or maybe, if you've explored spiritual traditions, you've been fed comforting tales of ascension, heaven, or reincarnation as a chance to start fresh. But the secret book of John doesn't sugarcoat it. Death is not an escape. It's a checkpoint, one the Archons have rigged to ensure you never leave their system. You think dying frees you from this world? That's exactly what they want you to believe. The reality is far more disturbing. The Gnostics describe the post-death experience not as a release, but as a calculated operation. As soon as the soul separates from the body, it doesn't ascend into some peaceful afterlife. No. It's intercepted. The Archons, those cosmic enforcers of the false creator Yaldabaoth, station themselves at various dimensional checkpoints. Their goal? To confuse, manipulate, and redirect souls back into physical bodies. Reincarnation, often painted as a cycle of growth, is, under their control, a recycling program. Your consciousness is trapped, forced to re-enter the tomb of flesh over and over, ensuring that you never gain enough clarity to break free. The Archons have crafted an elaborate system that plays on fear and ignorance. When the soul departs the body, it's vulnerable, disoriented by the transition. That's when the Archons strike. They project false visions, loved ones calling you, dazzling lights that promise peace, or voices urging you toward the light, a trap designed to lure you into compliance. The Gnostics weren't vague about this. They wrote that souls are questioned and judged by these entities, interrogated not for moral clarity, but to exploit confusion and guilt. The Archons use whatever leverage they can, memories, regrets, hopes, twisting them into chains that pull you back into the cycle of rebirth. And it's not just about returning you to Earth. It's about erasing what little awareness you've managed to gain. Each reincarnation isn't a clean slate, it's a carefully orchestrated amnesia. You're born again, stripped of past life knowledge, bombarded with new conditioning, and plunged into a system designed to distract and exhaust you. From childhood, you're reprogrammed to forget the manipulation at play, accepting the physical world as the only reality. By the time you start questioning things, if you ever do, you're already on the clock toward your next recycling. The mechanics of this trap are disturbingly efficient. The Archons operate through layers of astral realms, each acting like a bureaucratic checkpoint. If a soul resists or tries to assert knowledge of the trap, the Archons shift tactics. They'll use authority figures, beings posing as gods, angels, or even spiritual guides, to coerce compliance. Their deception is multifaceted. One moment, you're confronted with threats of punishment, the next, you're seduced by promises of heavenly rewards. It's a psychological operation at a cosmic scale, designed to corner you regardless of your beliefs in life. Historically, various ancient cultures hinted at similar concepts, but Gnostic texts were explicit in their condemnation of this cycle. They weren't preaching morality or redemption through external saviors, they were exposing a system of soul enslavement disguised as divine justice. Yaldabaoth and his Archons don't just want obedience in life, they demand it in death, ensuring that the soul's energy continues fueling their artificial construct. It's not about you ascending. It's about them maintaining control. And the worst part? Humanity has been complicit. Not out of malice, but ignorance. Traditions encouraging people to embrace the cycle, to go toward the light, are unwittingly echoing the Archons' manipulation. The light isn't salvation, it's bait. This system thrives on predictability. You fear death, you seek comfort, you gravitate toward what's familiar. The Archons exploit that instinct relentlessly. Even the concept of karma has been weaponized in this matrix. While karmic law is often presented as cosmic justice, under the Archonic system, it becomes another leash. You failed in your last life, they say. Go back. Do better. It sounds like growth, but it's another loop in the trap. The Archons don't care about moral improvement, they care about keeping you engaged, locked in cycles of striving and suffering that generate the energetic sustenance they crave. Ancient Gnostics risked everything to preserve this knowledge because they understood what was at stake. Not just physical freedom, but the liberation of consciousness from an elaborate, multi-layered prison designed to appear benevolent while functioning as a cage. The Archons don't just stand at the gates of death, they built those gates. They control what you see, what you hear, and how you respond. And for countless lifetimes, most souls have walked willingly into their hands, believing they were moving toward peace, not realizing they were stepping into another turn of the cosmic wheel. You've been told that time is linear, that you're born, you age, you die, and the universe just keeps ticking along. You've been taught that space is vast and infinite, a playground of stars and planets governed by immutable physical laws. But what if I told you that both time and space are artificial constructs, deliberately engineered by the Archons as part of a multidimensional prison system? Time and space aren't natural. They're mechanisms of control, layers of a labyrinth designed to trap consciousness within a simulated environment that feels real but is anything but. Time isn't just a measure of moments passing. It's a psychological weapon. By segmenting existence into past, present, and future, the Archons keep you fixated on regret, anticipation, and fleeting moments. Why? Because when you're locked into the timeline, you're too distracted to perceive the broader reality. You're constantly chasing the future or haunted by the past, rarely anchored in the awareness that time itself is a construct meant to limit perception. The Archons understand that being aware of its timeless nature is uncontrollable. So they embedded time into the fabric of this dimension, ensuring that your consciousness experiences it as an unavoidable force rather than the manufactured illusion it is. Then there's space, the seemingly infinite expanse filled with galaxies and stars. It's awe-inspiring, sure, but don't mistake the vastness for freedom. Space is another layer of confinement, a spatial boundary that keeps you oriented toward external exploration rather than internal realization. The Archons designed space to be an endless maze, making the physical universe so expansive that escaping it seems impossible. Exploration becomes a distraction. You're so busy looking outward, marveling at distant planets and cosmic phenomena, that you never question whether the entire construct is a cage. A beautifully rendered, mathematically precise cage, but a cage nonetheless. And here's where it gets more insidious. Time and space aren't just external environments, they're embedded into your biology. Your body ages according to time, reinforcing the illusion of mortality. Your senses perceive distance, reinforcing the illusion of separation. The Archons knew that controlling perception at the sensory level would be far more effective than any physical prison. If you believe you're bound by time and limited by space, you act accordingly. You make decisions based on scarcity, deadlines, and physical constraints, all of which are artificial parameters set to keep you docile. Gnostic teachings go deeper, suggesting that these constructs are maintained through frequencies and energetic fields manipulated by the Archons. Think about how electromagnetic fields govern technology. Now imagine that concept applied to reality itself. The Archons didn't just create a static world, they programmed it. Reality functions like a coded system, with time as a looping algorithm and space as a boundary parameter. Your consciousness is interfacing with this code, but without awareness, you're just running the program they've set. Moments of déjà vu, glitches in perception, these aren't random. They're fractures in the simulation, brief opportunities where the mind glimpses the cracks in the system. Even ancient civilizations hinted at this knowledge. Cultures across the globe, from the Mayans to the Egyptians, spoke of cycles of time and cosmic orders that reset. These weren't mere calendars, they were attempts to map the artificial timeline imposed on humanity. The Archons, through Yaldabaoth's arrogance, created a cyclical prison rather than a linear one. That's why history seems to repeat, why civilizations rise and fall in eerily predictable patterns. You're not moving forward in a straight line, you're running in a loop, generation after generation, lifetime after lifetime, stuck in a cosmic hamster wheel. The concept of distance is equally deceptive. Physical separation creates division, not just geographically, but emotionally and psychologically. By perceiving others as over there and yourself as over here, you buy into the illusion of fragmentation. But the Archons engineered space to be isolating. The vastness of the universe, rather than inspiring connection, enforces the belief in individuality and separation. The further apart things seem, the more disconnected you feel, both from others and from your true nature. It's a strategic move. Division ensures that collective awareness remains fractured and easily controlled. And let's talk about how this plays out at the cosmic scale. The Archons positioned themselves as gatekeepers of the astral planes, placing barriers between dimensions. You might think higher realms are places of liberation, but even those can be layers of the trap. The Archons established multiple planes of existence, each more subtle than the last, to ensure that even when a soul ascends, it's still operating within their system. Escaping the physical plane doesn't guarantee freedom. It just moves you to another level of the labyrinth, another layer of time-space manipulation where the rules shift but the prison remains. This entire structure, time, space, dimensional boundaries, is maintained through your belief in its validity. The Archons exploit consciousness itself to uphold the system. They don't need to constantly intervene because you've been programmed to self-reinforce the illusion. Every time you check the clock, make plans for the future, or perceive distance as real, you're unconsciously participating in the architecture of your own confinement. It's the perfect control mechanism, a prison so complete that the inmates not only guard themselves, but maintain the walls. The Archons are not just external manipulators, they are energetic parasites feeding off the very essence of human consciousness. And they don't just influence your world, they harvest you. Your fears, your desires, your anger, your sorrow, they're commodities in a cosmic exploitation scheme. This isn't metaphorical. This is systematic extraction, and you're the resource. The Archons' interest in humanity isn't about physical control, it's about energetic sustenance. Consciousness carries frequency, and emotions generate potent energetic fields. The Archons have no inherent light or creative power of their own, they are cosmic scavengers. Lacking the divine spark, they require an external energy source to sustain themselves. That source is you. The human soul contains a fragment of higher consciousness, and the Archons see that as prime real estate for energetic extraction. They don't need to physically enslave you when they can provoke emotional responses that produce the energy they crave. Ever wonder why negativity is so prevalent? Why conflict, anxiety, and despair seem hardwired into the human condition? It's not random. The Archons engineered an environment where suffering isn't just common, it's profitable for them. War, poverty, systemic injustice, these aren't unfortunate byproducts of civilization, they are deliberate constructs to generate large-scale emotional distress. Fear and anger are especially potent. When people are in a state of fear, their energy spikes in a way that's highly consumable to these entities. That's why societies are saturated with fear-inducing narratives, through news, entertainment, and constant threats of scarcity and danger. The harvesting process is disturbingly efficient. The Archons have developed an energetic network, a kind of metaphysical grid that overlays the physical world. When humans experience intense emotions, especially negative ones, those frequencies are funneled into this grid, which acts like a siphoning system. Think of it as an energetic taxation model where every thought and feeling generates a toll. You get angry? That surge of energy doesn't just dissipate, it's collected. You sink into despair? That heavy, dense frequency is harvested. Even personal suffering on a small scale feeds into this larger mechanism. The manipulation doesn't stop at fear and anger. The Archons also exploit desire. They push humanity into endless cycles of wanting money, power, validation, because craving produces a persistent energetic tension. Unfulfilled desire is a goldmine for them. When people chase after goals that never truly satisfy, the resulting frustration and yearning generate a continuous energy stream. Pleasure, too, can be hijacked. Temporary highs followed by emotional crashes create a perfect loop of harvestable energy. It's not that joy itself is inherently bad, it's that under archonic manipulation, even joy becomes transactional, engineered to be fleeting and hollow. Religious systems play a significant role in this harvesting process. The archons infiltrated spiritual beliefs to redirect human devotion toward themselves. Worship isn't inherently wrong, but when it's aimed at false deities posing as ultimate gods, like Yaldabaoth, it becomes an energy siphon. Prayers, rituals, and emotional outpourings directed at these imposter gods serve as direct energetic offerings. People believe they're connecting to the divine when, in reality, they're feeding the very forces that keep them enslaved. Gnostic texts emphasize that blind worship sustains the archon's power structure. Reverence, when misdirected, is just another extraction point. The archon's greatest asset in this system is humanity's ignorance of it. If you don't know you're being harvested, you don't resist. That's why distraction is their go-to tactic. They flood consciousness with trivialities, celebrity gossip, manufactured outrage, endless digital stimulation. By keeping you reactive, they ensure a steady flow of energetic output. It's a supply chain dependent on human engagement. The more people invest emotionally in surface-level chaos, the richer the archons become. They don't need to suppress rebellion physically when they can drown it in noise and confusion. There's also a deeply personal aspect to this manipulation. On an individual level, the archons exploit trauma and unresolved emotional wounds. Personal suffering creates an energetic signature that's particularly potent and long-lasting. People carry these frequencies for years, sometimes lifetimes, generating a slow-drip energy source the archons tap into continually. Self-hatred, shame, guilt, these aren't just psychological states, they're energetic currencies in the archonic economy. The more a person identifies with their suffering, the more accessible they become to energetic extraction. What's worse is how this system self-perpetuates. Children are born into environments saturated with archonic influence, inheriting the same fears and desires as previous generations. Media, education, and culture reinforce patterns of emotional volatility, ensuring that the harvest continues unbroken. This isn't a system that occasionally takes advantage, it's a full-time operation, meticulously designed to keep human consciousness in a perpetual state of reaction and depletion. Ancient Gnostic initiates understood this harvesting process and took extreme measures to shield their energy. They recognized that awareness disrupts the extraction mechanism. The archons rely on unexamined emotional responses, they thrive on autopilot reactions. The less conscious you are of your inner landscape, the more accessible you are to their influence. But when that automatic response cycle is interrupted, the archons lose their grip. They're not omnipotent, they're opportunistic. From the moment you're born, the archons embed themselves in your psychological framework. They construct layers of false identities, labels, roles, and beliefs you internalize without question. You think you're just a person living your life, making your choices, but much of what you call self is an artificially imposed structure. Family expectations, societal norms, personal ambitions, these are not organic developments. They're programmed constructs designed to keep you focused outward, chasing external validation, while the archons manipulate you from within. Their method is psychological warfare at the most intimate level. Thoughts of self-doubt, irrational fear, and persistent negativity aren't always products of your own mind. The archons plant them, subtly and consistently. They whisper into the stream of consciousness, blending so seamlessly that you rarely recognize the intrusion. Ever notice how certain negative thoughts feel like they appear out of nowhere, pulling you into cycles of anxiety or anger? That's intentional. It's not just your mind wandering, it's targeted influence. They feed you narratives that keep you locked in limitation, you're not good enough. You'll never change. This is just how life is. These aren't harmless mental glitches, they're calculated attacks meant to lower your frequency and maintain control. The archons exploit emotional triggers to deepen their hold. Every unresolved trauma becomes a doorway for them to enter and manipulate. They replay past hurts, fueling anger and sorrow, ensuring that you remain emotionally reactive. Reaction is key to their strategy. When you react, you're not thinking critically, you're acting on impulse. and those impulses are often preloaded by them. Conflict with others, internal guilt, shame spirals, these are not just psychological struggles, they're battles for mental sovereignty. The archons thrive when you're divided against yourself, when your internal dialogue becomes a battleground. Religion and ideology are their large-scale psychological weapons. By implanting dogmatic beliefs, they ensure that people cling to external authorities rather than seeking inner truth. Blind faith, unquestioned loyalty, and rigid worldviews are psychological prisons. They create false dichotomies, good versus evil, us versus them, to keep humanity fractured. Division isn't just a social issue, it's an archonic strategy. The more fragmented your identity, the easier you are to manipulate. Unity within oneself, coherence of thought and emotion, is dangerous to them because it diminishes their influence. Language itself is part of the trap. Words shape thought, and the archons have embedded limiting concepts into human language. Terms like sin, failure, impossible, these aren't just words, they're mental constructs designed to constrain your perception of what's possible. By controlling language, they control the framework within which you think. Ideas outside their approved spectrum seem irrational or impossible, keeping your mind confined to safe, predictable patterns. They don't just want you obedient, they want you incapable of imagining anything beyond their system. One of their most effective tactics is to make you identify with your thoughts and emotions. I am angry. I am afraid. By convincing you that every passing thought or feeling defines you, they keep you entangled in a false self. This identification ensures that you defend the very thoughts that imprison you. It's a psychological trap. The more you believe you are your mind, the more power they have over you. They've engineered a mental environment where questioning your own thoughts feels unnatural. And that's exactly how they maintain their grip. The archons also manipulate through collective consciousness. Cultural trends, mass hysteria, public opinions, they infiltrate groupthink to amplify their control. When millions of people believe the same thing, feel the same fear, or chase the same desires, it creates a powerful energetic current the archons can harness. Mob mentality, blind nationalism, fanaticism, these aren't just social phenomena, they're engineered mass manipulations. The archons don't need to control every individual thought if they can control the collective narrative. Technology has become a new frontier for their psychological infiltration. Constant information overload, endless scrolling, and digital echo chambers aren't just modern problems, they're expansions of the archonic agenda. By overwhelming the mind with stimulus, they prevent deep thought and self-reflection. The barrage of opinions, the pressure to conform to online trends, the fear of missing out, it all feeds into the archon's strategy of keeping you externally focused and internally chaotic. A distracted mind is an easy target. Gnostic texts warn that the greatest battle isn't out there, it's in here, in the mind. The archons know that if you regain control over your thoughts, if you stop reacting and start observing, their influence crumbles. But they've spent millennia refining their techniques. They'll play every card, guilt, fear, temptation, to keep you ensnared. Your mind is their battlefield, and they fight dirty. They don't need to invade your life when they can sit comfortably in your head, steering your choices, shaping your beliefs, and ensuring you never question the source of that nagging voice telling you to give up or stay silent. Escaping the tomb of Earth isn't about running from the physical world, it's about breaking free from the intricate, multi-layered system designed to trap your consciousness. The first and most crucial step is awareness, real, unfiltered awareness. Not the kind you get from surface-level spirituality or feel-good platitudes. We're talking about direct knowledge, gnosis, an inner realization that cuts through the layers of illusion the archons have built. According to Gnostic teachings, when a soul awakens to the fact that it's trapped, it disrupts the archons' influence. They can manipulate ignorance, but they can't override conscious recognition. Knowledge of their schemes, the understanding that this reality is an artificial construct, weakens their hold. But awareness alone isn't enough. Knowing the prison exists doesn't open the door, you have to navigate the exit strategically. When a soul begins to disengage from the physical and emotional attachments the archons exploit, the process of liberation accelerates. They can't extract energy from what you don't give. Emotional detachment isn't about apathy, it's about refusing to feed the system with reactive energy. The Archons thrive on anger, fear, and desire. By recognizing these triggers and choosing not to engage, you starve them of their power source. That sounds simple, but anyone who's tried to break habitual emotional patterns knows it's a battle. The Archons designed this matrix to be addictive. Pleasure, fear, conflict, it's all bait. Escaping means being vigilant enough to see the trap and disciplined enough not to fall into it. But the most challenging part of the escape comes after death, where the Archon's deception becomes most dangerous. Gnostic texts warn that the post-death journey is littered with false guides, beings posing as divine figures, beckoning souls toward the light or promising rest. These are traps. The Archons know that most souls, disoriented after leaving the body, will seek comfort and authority. That's when they intervene, projecting illusions and using guilt or temptation to coax souls back into the reincarnation cycle. The key, according to the texts, is recognition. The soul must reject all external authorities, refuse to engage with these entities, and affirm its origin beyond the Archon's domain. Mantras or internal declarations of one's divine origin can act as shields. Not religious prayers to external gods, those can be hijacked, but affirmations rooted in self-knowledge. I am from the source beyond you. You have no power over me. Statements like that, delivered with certainty, disrupt the Archon's manipulative tactics. The ancient Gnostics believed that the Archons, while cunning, lack true creative intelligence. They rely on deception and fear, but once confronted with unwavering awareness, they falter. They can't force a soul that refuses to comply. This process, however, isn't something you can cram into your final moments of life. Preparation matters. Cultivating awareness, practicing emotional sovereignty, and disengaging from external authorities must become part of daily life. That's why Gnostic communities were so focused on internal work, meditation, and knowledge transmission. They weren't just philosophizing, they were training for spiritual warfare. The Archons operate across dimensions, but their tactics remain consistent: deceive, divide, and drain. Your defense? Unshakable knowledge of your true origin and refusal to identify with the illusions they present. One overlooked tactic the Archons employ is the manipulation of memory after death. Even if a soul recognizes the trap, they'll attempt to cloud recollection, making past life knowledge seem like a dream slipping away. Gnostic traditions emphasized the importance of cultivating sharp awareness to retain consciousness through the death transition. Souls that remain lucid, aware of their journey, and focused on their origin beyond the archonic layers can break through the final barriers. It's a gauntlet, layers of deception, emotional manipulations, and psychological attacks. But the teachings are clear, persistence and clarity cut through the maze. The escape from the tomb of earth is not for the faint-hearted. It's not a one-time decision or a comforting belief system, it's a relentless, ongoing confrontation with forces that have spent millennia perfecting their manipulation techniques. The Archons rely on complacency, on souls giving up and accepting the cycle. Refusal is your weapon. Awareness is your shield. And knowledge, deep, unshakable knowledge, is your key. If you've made it this far, watching and absorbing this information, you've already taken a step most people never will. This isn't about fear. It's about clarity. The system is complex. The deception is deep. But the path to freedom, while challenging, exists. Thank you for sticking with me through this journey. Your attention, your curiosity, it matters. And while the information we've covered isn't easy to digest, it's necessary if we're ever going to understand the reality we've been thrust into. If you found value in this exploration, consider sharing it, diving deeper, and questioning everything you thought you knew. Until next time, stay sharp, stay aware, and thank you for being part of this journey to uncover the hidden truths.